last time. So this session we are going to see this, as we had mentioned, that it is a story of Dhruva, a boy who had very intense determination. So that's the auspicious story that we are going to hear now. Before starting, we will offer our prayers, and then we will start our session today. Om Ajnanatimmirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Gurun Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we will start this session by reciting one particular sloka, and then we will see how it is related to the today's topic of the Dhruva's pastime. Right. So this sloka comes in Srimad Bhagavatam, one of the very important slokas. It goes like this: Bhaktir Pareshanubhava Viraktir Anyatra Chaisa Trikayeka Kalaha Prapadyamanasya Yatasnatashu Tushti Pushti Shudapayo Nugasha. So this gives a very important detail about the bhakti or the process of surrender to the Lord. So it says that bhakti, pareshanubhava, and virakti, three things comes, and how it comes. Sutrika eka kalaha. So all these three things are going to come at one point in time, and then when it is going to come, prapadyamanasya. Prapadyamanasya means when I take shelter of the Supreme Lord. And then yatasnata shows like how it happens similarly to tushti pushti shudapayo nugasham. So that means when I eat the food, so I get tushti. That is tushti means satisfaction, and pushti, that is nourishment, and shudapaya means like the reduction of hunger. So all these three things, how it happens, it is not that after I fully finish my meal, then only I get satisfaction, or when I fully finish my meal, then only I get a reduction of hunger or something like that. So with every morsel of food I am taking, there is a level of satisfaction that I get, and then there is there is reduction of hunger that happens, and there is a little bit of nourishment that comes in. So it happens simultaneously, and it happens progressively. So in the same way, bhakti or devotion to the Lord, and paresha anubhava, that means direct experience of the Lord, and then virakti or detachment from the worldly things. So all these three things happen simultaneously when a person actually takes up when a person actually takes the shelter of the Supreme Lord. So now we will see bhakti. We have heard about bhakti, and even if you see anyone any common man would say that I have devotion to Lord, I worship the Lord at home and things like that. So that is one kind of bhakti, or some level of bhakti. But then if we see bhakti or devotion means to be dedicated to a particular cause. So ideally speaking, as we were discussing in the Gita course also, that just a minute, I'll just set up the things here. Okay, so we were discussing in the Gita course also that everything that exists belongs to God, and everything should be rightfully used in the service of God. So that's when it is called bhakti. And when we do things for the pleasure of the Lord, for His satisfaction, then it becomes bhakti. If we do it for our satisfaction, if I worship the Lord and then I say, okay, I want certain things, please provide me these things, so then it is not bhakti. No, it is kind of what is that? Some kind of a business that is going on. So I paid you some things, now you give me back in return some things. So that's not the way of real bhakti. So now we see that here it is mentioned that this no like bhakti is something that is dedicated to a particular cause, right? So the easiest way to understand is, everything that is existing is all the natural resources, they all belong to God, and we have been using all these natural resources since long time. And it is a matter of gratitude that we offer things in service of the Lord. We pay some tax, we have electricity, we have water, and we are using, and the government is charging some tax, right? So in the same way, like, we are also using so many natural resources which is property of Lord. So then it makes sense to offer something back in return to the Lord. So that's actually bhakti, right? And then we see the next thing is Paresha Anubhava. Paresha Anubhava means direct experience of the Supreme Lord. So now, what is this direct experience of the Supreme Lord? So now every one of us have gone to temple. We have ring the bell over there, and then we come in front of the Lord. We offer some prayers, and then put some money in the hundi, and then we want a big list of things to happen from the Lord. All these things happens, but then there is no reaction from the Lord. The Lord is just standing as He is. And then how we will get direct experience, when we will get direct experience. So this is something that it happens progressively as we take the shelter of the Supreme Lord. As we taking shelter means following the instructions of the Supreme Lord. So now we study in Bhagavad Gita that these are all various things that are there, like various rules and regulations that are there. So when we follow all these things, so that means to take shelter of the Lord. So now, for example, if we are sitting inside a room, inside our home, and then we take shelter of the roof which is there on the top, so this roof is going to help us from or protect us from the rain, sun, and different things. So in the same way, the process of devotion, or like taking shelter of the Lord, or taking shelter of the Lord means following His instructions. So for taking shelter of the roof, I can just walk into the room and I can sit. And in the same way, taking shelter of the Lord means to follow His instructions, and I will be protected from onslaught of the material nature, all the attacks of the material nature. So that's how I take shelter. And then because of which, bhakti increases, and then direct experience of the Lord I get. And then virakti. The third thing is the virakti. So virakti means, sometimes people afraid that, oh, if I get into the process of devotion and things like that, I will not have any worldly attachment. I will lose all attraction to everything material, and how will I take care of family and things like that and all. So that is not this is not a cause of worry actually. And in effect, it is not the purpose of bhakti also. So what is this virakti means, or detachment means? It is not tyaga, it is not renunciation. It is not kind of taking sannyas or something like that. That's called tyaga. So this virakti, detachment means something very profound. Now, for example, you may have some small children may be playing with some toys, and then you will not have any attraction to the toys. So because you have got detached from those toys. So because you have got detached from those toys, you will not throw the toy away. You don't have liking, and you don't have dislike also. It is kind of, that is called detachment or virakti. So that is something which is very, very nice, and which is very wonderful. In fact, if we have detachment to things that we have, we can use it in a nice way. If we have attached, then if we are very much attached to the things that we have, we will become biased, and we will not be able to do things in a proper way. So this detachment is a nice thing actually to have. And if we see this no, it's not going to affect the normal way of life, in fact. So it is always mentioned that if you have to be undisturbed, if you have to be peaceful, so then you have to learn tolerating the happiness and distress of this world. Even in Gita course, we studied that matrar sparshast kaunteyo sitoshana sukha agama paino anitya stam titikshva bharata. So which means that one should learn, Krishna is telling right in the second chapter, he's telling that one should learn how to tolerate the happiness and distress that comes in this world, right? And then no like always this dualities, no heat or cold, favorable people and unfavorable people, and all those things that can agitate us, like we have to learn to tolerate them, because we cannot stop this world. The world will continue to exist in the same way, but we cannot stop this world. We have to learn to tolerate this. So this is called detachment, or this is called virakti. Sometimes even the doctors tell, if somebody has a heart disease or they have weak heart, so then they tell that don't give him any very happy news or even sad news. Both of them will kind of create problem. So no, you should not give any happy news or sad news. So you should be like very very moderate, with such people. So if we develop virakti, so then anything that may happen around us, so we will not be affected, and we will be able to effectively deal with people around us in a nice way, actually. So this is the thing, and this is compared to the reduction of hunger. So now like bhakti pareshanubha virakti anyatra chaishataka eka kalaha prapadyamanasya yatashnatashus tushti pushti shupaya. So when I eat the food, I get no tushti, that is satisfaction, pushti, that is nourishment, and shudapaya, that is the reduction of hunger. So in the same way, when I follow the instructions of the Lord, I follow Bhagavad Gita, so then I get bhakti towards the Lord, then I get the strength or direct experience of the Lord, and also I get no virakti or detachment, which is kind of very very nice thing, which actually is compared to the reduction of hunger in terms of having food. So now we'll see all these principles very graphically demonstrated in the story of Dhruva. It is a very amazing story, and it's a very ancient story. All of us would have heard about this star called Dhruva Nakshatra, or the pole star. So that's a very very often, like, we would hear about this pole star, right? So even when travelers, when they go traditionally, when they go when they didn't have compass and things like that and all, so when they actually go in the sea, so they generally use this pole star as a reference, so that they can get the direction. So that's the northern star, and that's like brighter than other stars. So in this way, like, they would take help of this pole star to get like to get their direction. And this star is named after this personality called Dhruva. So he, in the story, we are going to see something very amazing. The intense determination and focus this boy had, and then we are going to see a lot of values, very amazing values that is being practiced. And also we are going to see about the perfection of yoga that this Dhruva had attained. And so these are all some of the things that we will be able to see in this story. And we will see that there was a great personality by name Swayambhuva Manu. Manu is directly the son of Lord Brahma. And then Manu had a wife by name Satarupa. And in this wife, he begot Uttanapad and Priyavrata. So two very great powerful kings were born of Manu. And in fact, Manu means the father of mankind, or he is the source of the human race. And that's we call ourselves as Manushya. Manushya means like descendants of Manu. And even the English word man comes from this word Manu, actually. So in this way, we see that he's the forefather, or the origin of the human race. And we see this, he had two sons, Uttanapad and Priyavrat. And this Uttanapad had two wives. One is called Suniti and another is called Suruchi. So Suniti had a son by name Dhruva, and Suruchi had a son by name Uttama. And king was very, very attached to the second wife, that is Suruchi. and he made her the prominent wife and the queen of the kingdom. And then he was quite everybody knew that she is the favorite queen of the king. And one day, this queen's son Uttama, he was sitting on the lap of his father, like Uttanapad, and then that too on the Rajasimhasan. And that time Dhruva, he was also playing nearby, and then he also wanted to sit on the father's lap. And then he was because Suruchi was there right next to the place, the king also was hesitating to take Dhruva onto his lap. And seeing this, Suruchi, she spoke to Dhruva in a very, very harsh way. She was very envious of this child, and she spoke with a lot of pride. And she spoke even like in such a voice that king also can hear. And what she told was, you see, you cannot climb onto the king's throne, or you cannot climb and sit on your father's lap, because you may be a king's son, but then you are not born of me. No, I am the queen, and you have not born of me. So because of which you will not be able to sit on your father's lap. And if you at all desire to sit on your father's lap, then you have to perform austerities, tapasya, and then you have to please the Supreme Lord, and then you have to take birth in my womb. Then you will be able to sit on the throne of your father. So that means literally she is telling you have to die and take birth again to sit on the father's lap. So that's how harsh she was, really very harsh she spoke. And then Dhruva, he is born of a Kshatriya father. So Kshatriyas cannot take any insult. Though he was just a 5-year-old small boy, he could not able to tolerate this insult. And he was like breathing very heavily, like a snake beaten by a stick. And then he was very angry at his father. And then he just left from that place, and to see his mother Suniti. And he went to his mother, and then he was like very he was trembling with anger, and then he was crying very grievously. And when he went to Suniti, and Suniti was asking him, no, what happened to you, no, why are you crying like this, please tell me what happened. And this boy is gone, he's going on crying. And all the other palace residents over there, so they had kind of heard this whole thing happening. And then so they just I think the internet is good enough. Okay, so they had kind of spoken to they spoke to Suniti, and they told that, you see, like your stepwife or your co-wife, she kind of insulted your son, and she kind of did not allow him to sit on the father's lap. And then she told that, if you have to sit on your father's lap, then you have to die and take birth again, and do great austerities, please Lord Vishnu, then you will be able to be born in my womb, then you can sit on your father's lap. So that's how you can attain this position. So then Suniti, she, after hearing all these things, she was like very, very sad, such a thing is happening. And then she could not actually find a remedy to pacify her son. But then she told one very important thing. Maybe your stepmother had spoken like this very harshly, but you don't feel anything bad about that. You don't think anything inauspicious to anybody. So this is a very nice instruction that the mother is giving. So the mother could have told that, no, now we are very weak, and after you grow up, maybe you can take revenge and things like that. She's not maybe she's not fostering the envy in the heart of the child. Rather, she is telling that, don't think anything inauspicious for anybody, right? So king actually does not like me. He doesn't even treat me like a maidservant. I'm his wife, but then he doesn't like me. So what to do? You have become my son, so that's your unfortunate position. So what can I do? But then the Suniti's advice, there is something nice in Suniti's advice. So what is that? She told that you have to worship Lord Vishnu. So that is something very nice. Dhruva's mother says. So she says that now in our forefathers, like Lord Brahma, your great grandfather, and then Manu, your grandfather, all these personalities, they had actually worshipped Lord Vishnu. and by pleasing Lord Vishnu, they could able to do very, very miraculous things in this world. In fact, Lord Brahma created the whole universe just by the blessings of the Lord Vishnu. And if we see in Srimad Bhagavatam, it explains there are different kinds of subjects that are described in the Bhagavad Puran, and it is mentioned that Atra Sarga Visargascha Sthanam Poshana Mutaya Manvantreshanukata Nirodha Muktirashraya. So this is Sarga means the primary creation, and Visarga means the secondary creation. So primary creation means creation of this basic structure of the universe and creation of Lord Brahma. So till then, the primary creation, that's done by Lord Vishnu. And then the secondary creation of creating the 14 planetary systems below, that is done by Lord Brahma. And that is possible because Lord Brahma pleased the Supreme Lord. And in that way, he could able to execute that. And Brahma's son Manu, like he also did many, many miraculous things just by pleasing the Supreme Lord. And Suniti is telling to Dhruva that this is the way our family tradition is. This is the way our forefathers have did many great wonderful things. So now you also should follow in their footsteps. You also should become you also should worship the Lord with full determination, and then with deliberate intelligence, and with strong determination. And in that way, like you will attain the Lord. And then once you attain the favor of the Lord, then anything and everything is possible. So then Dhruva asks, where will I be able to find the Lord? How can I actually approach him, and where will I be able to find the Lord? So then Suniti is telling that many great sages, they would go to the forest to find the Lord, to worship the Lord and things like that. So that's the way they would go. And then in fact, the Lord is a protector and maintainer of everyone. So when going to the forest, they don't afraid being attacked by any wild animals, or being they would not get afraid of any of such things. So they because the Lord is a protector, you are going to worship the Supreme Lord, and he is going to personally take care of you. So don't worry about all those things. Head towards perfecting your life by achieving the favor of Lord Vishnu. So this boy, just 5 years old, you can imagine, and I don't know how the mother had the guts to give such an instruction also, to go to the forest and worship Lord Vishnu. So in those days, in the Satya Yuga, so that is a prescribed method. So people would go to the forest and do tapasya for a long period of time. So in the Gita course, we have studied that Kritaya Dhyayato Vishnu. So this incident happened in the Satya Yuga or Krita Yuga, and in that time, so the prescribed method is Dhyayato Vishnu. So, and for that, this kind of meditation, dhyana on the Supreme Lord, or Ashtanga Yoga process, that is not possible living in the cities. One must have to go to the forest to execute such a penance. So in nowadays, we have many yoga institutes and things like that. So wherein in the city, we practice, we in the name of yoga, we actually practice something, but then that is not really yoga. Yoga means what? Ashtanga yoga means yama, niyama, then after that, this one, asana, pranayama, then pratyahara, then dhyana, dharana, and samadhi. All those things put together is called the yoga. And what we are actually doing is pranayama and asana, so which are some 2 steps in this process. That's it. So, but then we are not doing the entire process of the yoga system. So in the whatever the yoga that has been taught in the yoga institutes, that's not in a strict sense, it is not to be called as yoga. It's kind of 2 limbs of, or 2 parts of Ashtanga yoga, wherein it is complete in 8 parts, right? So now we see that this boy, he heads to the forest, and then on the way, Narad Muni, he actually comes on the way. And why this has to be taken very seriously, such a great personality as Narada, why he has to come and meet this boy? Because Uttanapad is the king of the world, and then his son has just gone away to the forest, and it is not an ordinary news. And then Narad Muni wanted to take note of this, and then he went and saw this boy, and he just kept his all virtuous hand on the head of the boy Narada, and he offered his blessings. And then he was just thinking to himself that how wonderful or the powerful Kshatriyas. These people, they are not able to tolerate even a small insult on their ego. And that too, he was just a small boy. And then Narada starts advising him, saying that, no, you're just a small boy. No, it is time for you to play. It is time for you to do all other playful activities and things like that and all. And if our elders speak something harsh, if they speak some insulting words, we should not take it very seriously, right? So even if you think that your honor is affected, so you should understand that nothing comes without our karma. Like, we must have performed some karma, and for which our happiness and distress comes in this world. And you should just tolerate, and you should just move on. And you should not be worried like this. No, Narada is giving instruction like this. And then Narada is telling that you have decided to perform this Ashtanga yoga process, and which is very, very difficult. So in my opinion, it is not at all possible for an ordinary man. And many mystic yogis, they have been trying to perfect this process of Ashtanga yoga, and they have not been successful. Very hardly one person gets successful in this kind of endeavor. So in my opinion, it is not fit for you. You should not attempt for it. You should simply go back home. And now it is when you're grown up and when you have much more maturity and things like that, maybe you can come back then, and then you can perform these kind of austerities. Now it is not a right time, so you should get back to home. So then Narad Muni says that when you get back to home, you should have this equanimity on both happiness and distress. He mentions some very wonderful instruction, very, very wonderful sloka that is very helpful for all of us, in fact. So we will also see that sometime in the Gita course. So this is a nice thing that he mentions. He says, Gunadikan mudam lipset anukrosham gunadamad maitrim samana danvichen natapay rabibhuyate. So that means if you find somebody better than you in quality, then Gunadikan mudam lipset. So you should become happy about that. So he has got some nice qualities. It is very nice. So he's got something better than me. So I should become happy on that. And then Anukrosham Gunadamat. So when we find somebody is lower than us in some quality, so then we should try to help them out in their difficulties. And then Maitrim Samanad. So with equal people, we should develop friendship with such a people. So if we do this, Natapay Rabibhuyate, that means no more material miseries you will have. So that means all the miseries, if we actually take the corollary of this particular sloka, all the miseries, the source of all miseries is what? The source of all miseries is that we don't know how to deal with people. So here Narad Muni is telling 3 kinds of people are there, and if you know to deal with these 3 kind of people, then there is no miseries at all. So you will win over all the miseries of this world. So what are the 3 things? Gunadikan mudam lipset. If you find somebody better than you, be happy about it. And then if you find somebody lower than you, help them out. And if you find somebody equal, develop friendship with them. So now what happens practically in this world? If somebody is better than us, so sometimes we feel envious, and we feel that, why is this guy better than me? Why not me? How can I pull him down, or how can I overtake him? So that's kind of thought process sometimes comes in our mind. So this causes material misery. And then Anukrosham Gunadaman. So when a person is lower than us, so we may feel that, okay, no, this guy is very cheap. No, it's not worthy to have any relationship with him, or even to look upon him, or something like that. So it's not at all useful. No, he's not at all useful. So or to belittle a person who's not in par with our capacities and things like that. And then equals also, there is a lot of envy and things like that may come in, and we may develop some kind of a bitter relationship with people. So if we actually follow these 3 things, that being happy when we see somebody better than us, and feeling compassion and helpful, being helpful to people who are lower than us, and then developing friendship with people who are equal to us, so then there is no material miseries. That's a very powerful instruction which Narada gives. And if you do all these things, no, you'll be able to tolerate all the things that are happening around you, and then no, you can peacefully stay back at home. So then like Dhruva Maharaj is speaking back to Narada, and he's telling that you see, like whatever instructions you have given, it's all very wonderful, and no, definitely those things can bring about a lot of auspiciousness in anyone's life. No, you have, thank you for giving me such wonderful instructions, but I'm very sorry, I should admit myself, I'm very sorry. No, like I am, you may think that I'm being impudent, but then I'm just being honest in front of you. It is not my fault. So I am born in a Kshatriya family, and somehow or other this insult has pierced my heart. The words of my stepmother has pierced my heart. So your good instructions are not able to stay in my heart. No, there is a big hole in my heart, and your instructions are just flowing out of them. So like, no, if you don't mind, like you give me an honest path in which I can actually endeavor and get a bigger kingdom than my great grandfather. No, so that's this one. So because he was not allowed to sit on the throne of his father, so he want to get a bigger kingdom which is greater than his great grandfather. So his grandfather is Manu, and great grandfather is Lord Brahma, and no, this whole universe belongs to Lord Brahma. And then what can be something greater than Lord Brahma's place? But then still Narada told, okay, no, it seems like you have a lot of determination, you are not budging from your way, and you are you want to attain whatever you want to get it at any cost. So I appreciate your determination. So here in this case, if we see, no, Dhruva had determination, but then there was so many instances, so many things that would have happened, like that kind of weakens his determination. No, like he is a boy who has grown up in the what is it, in the palace. All nice facilities are there. There is no shortage of anything. And then you can imagine when he is stepping into the forest. No, he doesn't have a place to stay, he doesn't have any place to take rest, or time to time he will not get food also over there. No, he has tolerated that. And then here is somebody, no, who's coming and saying, okay, if you have lost your way back to home, no, I am there, no, I can take you back. And then he's giving some good instructions and things like that. So if it were to be an ordinary case, no, the boy would have told, okay, fine, no, I've just come out of a fit, no, I'll get back home, and I'm very afraid of this forest. So but here Dhruva is saying that no, like I don't want to get back, no, either do or die. I'm going to attain a greater kingdom, or I'm going to die. So it's not like I cannot just get back without achieving the goal that for which I've left my home. So Narada appreciates this thing. So if we are setting a goal, and if we are walking on the path, there will be a lot of obstacles that will come on our way. And if we there are three kinds of reactions that can happen when we find an obstacle. So one reaction is that we may just succumb to that, and then we say like, okay, no, I'll not be able to do anything, and no, probably I have to give it up. And then some people may just tolerate, and they may just like not progress, not regress, and they just stay on wherever they are. And then some people use that obstacles as the stepping stones, and they proceed further to achieve something great. And here Dhruva is something, somebody of that sort. And here if you see, Narada is coming and telling that you should not do this. And then Dhruva is asking that, no, I'm very sorry, like you're an elder, I have to like obey you, but in this case, no, I'm not able to obey you. And if you think it wise, no, you can give me some honest path to achieve whatever I want to achieve. So that kind of melted Narada's heart. And then he was he was telling that, okay, fine, no, it seems like, no, you are really determined to achieve your goal, and then all my blessings unto you. And whatever your mother has told, that is definitely true. If you actually worship Lord Vishnu, and if you actually please him, there is nothing impossible in this world to achieve, for a person who has pleased the Supreme Lord. So my good fortune unto you, and now I will teach you a process by which you can actually, if you perfect the process, you will be able to have the darshan of the Lord. So he says that you immediately go to the banks of Yamuna, and there is a very wonderful forest by name Madhuvan. And there, this place is spiritually very subcharged, and it can actually draw you closer to God. And in that place, you should go and take 3 times in a day. You should take bath in the Yamuna, And then because this water is very clear, it's very auspicious, and it's very sacred river, and you should take bath 3 times a day over there. And then you should perform Ashtanga Yoga. So like we should mind it that this is a Leela that happened in the Satya Yuga, and Ashtanga Yoga is the prescribed process. If it were to be in Kali Yuga, the process would be like chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. But then at that point in time, so it is the process is to perform Ashtanga Yoga. And then it says like sit in a calm and quiet place, and in a steady posture, and then you should perform 3 different kinds of breathing exercise and asanas, and this will kind of free you from all material contaminations. So if you see, the whole process of Ashtanga Yoga is all about like freeing the initial process, whatever is there, that is all for freeing oneself from the like contamination of the material existence. So how is it so? If you see the yama niyama, so that is do's and don'ts, that are there, and then pranayama, asana, and then pratyahara. So all these things, it kind of purifies our existence. And after we become purified, with a purified mind, we can actually focus on the Lord. We can actually put the dhyana onto the Lord. So that is the process of Ashtanga Yoga. And that's the same thing that Narada is teaching to Dhruva, right? And then he says, once you purify yourself in that way, then meditate in your heart on the Supreme Lord, Vishnu. So now, like many of the meditation techniques we might have attended in different places, sometimes they give a lamp, a candle, and then they ask us to focus on the candle. So anyway, we are focusing on some object. Now, what's the problem if we focus on the Supreme Lord, right? So if we focus on some material object, some ordinary object, so what's the great benefit that we are going to get out of such a focus? So generally, the dhyana should be on the Supreme Lord. So that's the way the dhyana is performed. And like here, he's the Narada is describing how you should make the dhyana on, like whom you should make the dhyana on. So you should see the Supreme Lord in your heart, and his face is like prasanna vadanam. His face is like perpetually very, very beautiful. And then he's always ready to award benedictions. The Lord has one of the names as Varadaraj. Varadaraj means he's best of the givers of benedictions, or blessings. So the Lord is very eager, always very, very eager to give blessings to his devotees. And then he's nicely decorated eyebrows, raised nose, broad forehead, and then the Lord's form is ever youthful. In fact, in the beginning of the ISKCON, the devotees, they were not very much experienced, and they were actually drawing paintings for the books that Srila Prabhupada would publish. And then, one of the devotees, he made a sketching of the Lord with heavy muscles and very strong and old and things like that. So then, Srila Prabhupada, the founder of ISKCON, so he was mentioning that God doesn't need to have heavy muscles to take care of this world or lift this world and things like that. No, he's always very youthful, and he has a very tender body. That's how the Lord is. And though he has a tender body, he can still lift Govardhana mountain. So in the Vedic literatures, there is a nice sloka that actually mentions this. It says, Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayavvanam Cha. Navayavvanam. Yavvanam means youthful form. So the Lord's form is ever youthful. The Lord appears like a fresh youth. And then he's always prepared to give shelter to his devotees. And then he has a Srivatsa symbol in his heart. So Srivatsa means there is a three white hairs that's there in the chest region of the Lord. So this actually denotes the resting place or the residence of Lakshmi Devi. So this Srivatsa symbol. And then he has 4 hands. Shankha Chakra Gada Padma. He is carrying, and then he's having a bluish hue, like freshly formed rain clouds. and then he's well decorated with nice ornaments. He wears a kastuba gem, and then he stays, or he stands on the lotus of the meditator, lotus heart of the meditator. So like when a person is meditating on the Lord, so the Lord appears on the heart, with these, in this kind of a form, and it is very, very pleasing to see for the eyes and mind. So Narada is actually advising Dhruva that you should imagine, or you should actually meditate on such a form, in your heart, and the Lord will. That's the form of meditation. Actually, he actually tells to Dhruva, and then he says that now I'll give you a mantra which is very powerful, and you should chant this mantra, and you should constantly chant this mantra, and then you should try to make a form of the Lord out of clay or mud, whatever is available in the forest, and then you should offer regular worship to that form of the Lord. And he's telling this mantra is, like, let us all chant this mantra. So you can chant after me. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So in this way, this mantra Narad Muni gives, and then he tells that, no, you should chant this mantra, and you should offer worship to the form of the Lord, and then you should also remember the Lord in his various leelas, in his various pastimes that he has performed. So in this way, you will be able to attract the Lord very, very soon. If you perform this process, very soon you will be able to perfect, and then very soon you will be able to see all the heavenly personalities, all the divine personalities who are actually traveling in the sky. So, and my blessings unto you. You will attain perfection very soon. He mentions this, and then he says that now you can proceed to Madhuvan. So now, like, the boy actually proceeds to Madhuvan, and then he starts executing the penances. In the meantime, Narada actually comes to the kingdom, and then he sees Uttanapad, and then he meets the king, and the king is in great distress, and he is very, very sad. He's telling to Narada that, you see, like, I'm such a bad person. I'm so much attached to my wife that I didn't even bother to my son wanted just to sit on my lap. He didn't ask me anything else, and he was just 5 years old. I have not been merciful to him. I have just for his interest for sitting in my lap, I didn't allow him. And then now, he has left the home and he has gone to forest. What kind of condition he is in, whether wild animals may attack him, or what is going to happen to him, and things like that. So he is in great anxiety. The king is in great anxiety at the loss of his son. And at the time, Narada is telling to the king that, don't worry about Dhruva. So Dhruva is a great personality. He's going to actually, in fact, he's going to perform such amazing feats that he will spread your glory, and everybody will talk about your son in a great way. So in 6 months time, he's going to have darshan of Lord, and then he's going to come victorious back home. So don't worry about him. So he will bring good name and fame to you. So now the scenes switches back to the forest where Dhruva is performing his penances, and he's following all the instructions of Narada. He's taking 3 times bath in the Yamuna, and then he has made a form of the Lord out of clay, and he's worshipping the Lord in that way. And then he's chanting this mantra, what is given by Narada. So in the first month, he only ate fruits, and that too only once in 3 days. And in the second month, his tapasya increased, his austerities increased, and then he started having only dry grass and leaves, which naturally would fall off from a tree. He would not even take the pain of climbing a tree and plucking things. He would just whatever falls in the ground, the dried ones, he would just take them, and that too once in 6 days. And then in the third month, his tapasya, his austerity increased further. He would only take water once in 9 days, once in every 9 days. And then in the fourth month, his tapasya even increased, and then he mastered the breathing exercise so much that he would just inhale air once in 12 days. This is how the Ashtanga Yoga process is. When there are this prana, apana, vayana, udana, all these different airs are there. So when the upgoing air is neutralized into the downgoing air, and when the all these different airs are neutralized with the counterpart, with its counterpart, so then what happens is an equilibrium happens, and then this body doesn't need any external support anymore. So that's how the yogis would live in in the Himalayas or all these places for a long time, because they perfect this breathing process, and then they don't require any external support. They can live for a long time. So like this Dhruva Maharaj, he's practicing all this wonderful thing, and like in the 5th month, what happens, he perfects this breathing process completely, and then he stands on one leg, and he's able to see the Lord in the heart, and he is completely absorbed in meditating on the form of the Lord in the heart. And no, he's completely absorbed. No, there is no distraction at all for him. And then this Dhruva, he captures the Lord within the heart, and he closes all the 9 gates, eyes, nose, mouth, ears, anus and rectum. So all the different gates that are there in our body, he just closes all the gates, and he's able to neutralize his breathing within himself, and he is completely absorbed in the meditation of the Lord. So his breathing process, or his success in the yoga, is in such a way that he could able to control the universal breathing, and then he could able to control the air circulation in the whole universe. And he literally brought everything to stand still. He literally brought everything to stand still. And then because he was his meditation was so strong, he became super heavy. And then he was pushing down the earth. He was just standing on one leg, he was just pushing down the earth, and he was choking up the universal breathing. So when this thing is happening, all the devatas, Indra, Chandra, and all these great personalities, they all are perplexed. Is there some demon who has come and who's doing all this kind of things? And they are running to the Lord Vishnu, and they're offering prayers to Lord Vishnu, and then they are saying that this universal breathing is choked up. No, I think some demon has come, and he's actually creating such a nuisance. So then Lord Vishnu says, no, don't worry, this is not a demon. No, this is my devotee, and he's executing austerities and penances, and like in a view of attaining me. So don't worry, I will go and I will stop his tapasya. So in this way, like assuring all the devatas, Lord Vishnu actually comes on the scene. And then like when he comes on the scene, by now Dhruva is like closing his eyes, closing all the gates of his body, and he's fully meditating on the Lord. He's not bothered to open and see that Lord has come in front of him. So suddenly the Lord actually vanishes from his heart. So when the Lord vanishes from his heart, so Dhruva opens his eyes, and then he's as if he has got some very, very valuable treasure, and he has just lost it. So when the darshan of the Lord gets vanished from the heart, he becomes very, very, very perplexed, and then he opens his eyes with great anxiety, and then he sees the Supreme Lord in front of him. So whatever form he was meditating upon, so he's able to see the same form in front of him. So now he was so happy to see this form, and in fact he was looking at the Lord as if he is going to drink the Lord through his eyes. And then he wanted to embrace the Lord. He wanted to go closer to the Lord, and he wanted to offer some nice praises and glorification to the Lord. But then he's just a small boy. He has not got educated. Generally the boys would go to Gurukul after 5 years of age, and he is less than 5 years of age, and he has not even got any formal education and things like that. So he don't have he's not getting any words to speak to the Lord. He wants to offer some nice glorification to the Lord, nice nice stuti. He wants to offer some nice stuti to the Lord, but then he's not able to do anything. Considering his this boy's uncomfortable situation, the Lord takes his conch. Shankha, Chakra, Gada, Padma is there in his hand. So he takes the conch, and then he places it on the head of this boy. And the moment the Shankha was placed on the head of the boy became completely educated in the all the Vedic scriptures, all the knowledge, everything gets manifest in his heart. And then he starts offering many wonderful prayers to the Lord. And in fact, one of the prayers that he offers is a very nice prayer. So it says, Sthana Bilashat Tapasi Stitoham Tvam Prapavan Deva Munindra Guhyam Kancham Vichinman Apidivya Ratnam Swamin Kritarthosmi Varam Nayache. So he's telling that Sthana Bilashat. So I came here with the desire to get a great kingdom than my great grandfather. So Sthana Abhilasha. Abhilasha means with a desire. Sthana Abhilashat, Tapasi Stitoham. So I had been performing this hard tapasya for getting some a greater kingdom, getting some bigger wealth from you. And then, that's what I wanted. But then what I got is Tvam Praptavan. Tvam means like in a respectful way of addressing a superior, saying Tvam, you. Like Tvam Praptavan. Praptavan means I got you. And Deva Munindra Guhyam. So that means even for Deva, even for great demigods or Munis, like great rishis, and even great kings, nobody can attain you. It is not possible to get your darshan. It is not at all easy. Tvam Praptavan Deva Munindra Guhyam. And then Kancham Vichinvan Api Divya Ratnam. So that means Kancham means like a broken piece of glass. So I was looking for what is that? I was looking for a broken piece of glass, but then I got Api Divya Ratnam. So I got a very wonderful gem. I got a very wonderful jewel, in fact, in the place of a broken piece of glass. So what is Dhruva comparing to the broken piece of glass? No, his desire for getting a bigger kingdom, he's comparing it to a broken piece of glass. And what is he comparing to? Divya Ratnam, or a great treasure. So it is the Lord's association that he has got, the darshan of the Lord that he has got. So he is comparing that to Divya Ratnam. So then he says, Swamin, oh my Lord, Kritartham, I am very, very grateful to you, for giving such a gift of appearing in front of me. Varam Nayache. So that means now I am completely satisfied. I don't want anything. Whatever I have desired for, whatever I have thought and came here, I don't want that now, because I've got something bigger than that. I've got your darshan. So I don't want anything. I don't want anything more from you. So now we see that Dhruva was like amazing personality. Like as a small boy, he got the darshan of the Lord, and then the Lord offered him lot of boons. He's saying that, see, my appearance will never go in vain. It will never go in vain. So you had desired to get a bigger kingdom than your great grandfather. So definitely I will award you that, even though you may not have that desire right now. So I will definitely award you that. So you will have a very great kingdom. And he awards this pole star. So pole star is a special place, which is, though it is part of this universe, it is considered to be a it is considered to be a very exalted planet. In fact, that is where the milk ocean is situated, and that is where all the devatas, they go whenever they have some trouble, so they go and approach Vishnu. So that's actually a Vishnu's planet, the pole star, Dhruva Nakshatra. So the Lord gives his own planet, saying that, okay, now you take my planet, and then that's greater than even Lord Brahma's so that's greater than even Lord Brahma's kingdom. So you take that and you rule over this planet. So in this way he gets this benediction, and then he goes back home. Dhruva finishes his meditation, and then he goes back home. And what happens there is he become famous as a person who has personally saw Lord Vishnu, and all the ill treatment, mistreatment, everything has gone for a toss. He's become the the blue-eyed boy of the whole kingdom, and everybody is cherishing this person now. So now we see in the story a lot of wonderful things that happens. So he just followed the instructions of Narada. Dhruva just followed the instructions of Narada, and then he got the perfection of direct darshan. Like we saw in the beginning, that bhakti, pareshanubhava, virakti. Anyatra chaisa trika eka kala prapadyamanashu yatasnatashu tushti pushti shudapayo nudasha. So we see that here Dhruva got bhakti, and then he got direct darshan of the Lord. and then he got virakti. Towards the end, he was comparing all the opulences that he will have, or no, he can get, to be a piece of glass. It is of not much of worthy, this one. So in this way, like, Dhruva is, developing all these three things, and the result of which is what he became glorious. He became a very amazing personality. His like, even now people call this pole star as Dhruva Nakshatra. So though this particular thing had happened in the Satyuga very, very long back, right? So this is a story of intense determination. We can see that if we have a goal, and if we have like, whatever may be our goal, if we proceed towards the goal in a very, very strong way, with devotion to the Lord in the heart, so then what happens is, like, we will get all these wonderful things, and we can also become very glorious personalities, right? So that's the small message from this particular story. And now I'll kind of open the chat box. If like, participants had any questions or anything want to clarify, so you can kind of ask in this chat box. Hope this story was useful and inspiring for being determined in our life. In fact, it is mentioned that if we hear the good qualities or good things about somebody, so then we will get that particular quality. So if we hear the like, blasphemous thing, or if we actually point the faults at anybody and things like that, so we will also develop such faults in us, right? So whatever we meditate upon, we will get that. So if we meditate on the good qualities of Dhruva, not like being determined, so then we will also get that quality. So want to know the full meaning of Hare Rama Hare Krishna mantra. So Hare means the energy of Lord, and Krishna or Rama means the names of the Lord. Rama means like the pleasure potency, or the source or root of all happiness, and Krishna means the all attractive. So in this way, this Hare, Krishna and Rama has these meanings. And then when Manu was first human being in the human race, whom did he rule? What was his kingdom? Yeah, like, he gave birth to further generations, and then like this Uttanapad, Priyavrat and things like that. And then he was the root of the current human race. But then with him, there were many other sages were born also of Brahma. So like Marichi and like Daksha and things like that. People like that. So even they also procreated, but Manu is like very, very significant in the this one. So in the beginning of creation, so these people are called as Prajapatis, or one who actually bring about progeny, or one who actually fill the universe with population, right? So such are these people. So that's the first service after creation of the world. And their kingdom is like, in that time the people were quite scarce, and they were kind of beginning the population at that point in time. So how to develop concentration? So this like, when we actually do the same thing same time every day, like, we will also see that in regulative devotional service, or regulative practice of this one. So that is I think the Monday session of Gita course. So by doing things regulated way, and by doing the same thing same time every single day, we will actually get a lot of concentration. So that's a very important tip for becoming concentrated. But then we have to do it consistently for a period of time. It's not a matter of overnight job. I'll just do something now and I'm going to get concentration. So it's not going to work like that. We have to do a consistent practice. That's when we will be able to get it, right? And then whether Dhruva is sent to Vaikuntham. Yeah, Dhruva Nakshatra or pole star is non-different from Vaikunta. So there is Vaikunta beyond this universe, and then this is like, this pole star is like a Vaikunta within the universe, and that's where the milk ocean is there, and that's where Lord Vishnu lies down, right? So that's that's equivalent to Vaikunta. And then Dhruva Tara means pole star. It can be visible only in northern hemisphere. What about any star in the southern hemisphere? Any significant stories? No, like this Dhruva Nakshatra is, in fact, that is the connecting link of all the other planets. That we will see that in some time. that like Vedic geography, like we will discuss that in some sessions. So the modern geography what we have, it's quite insufficient, or quite insufficient in explaining all the phenomena that is happening. So but then the Vedic geography or Vedic astronomy, we can see that it gives much more precise calculation of all the planetary systems. So this pole star is the northern star, and then it is in the south you don't find much of stars, like it's the the other stars are all not fixed actually. So this pole star is fixed star actually. So other stars, they move in reference to the pole stars. So like we cannot find any particular star belonging to a southern hemisphere. So that's not possible actually. So they keep changing in their place. So okay, meditation sessions, we will try to hold some meditation sessions also. And the next Gita course is going to start tomorrow, like tomorrow evening onwards. The mantra that the Narada Muni said, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So that's the mantra, like that is chanted by Narada at that point in time. So how many years should we chant, and how many rounds per day? So if we want to attain perfection, even in one day we can actually, but then the sincerity and absorption is required. So that's this one. So we all like serious practitioners, we chant 16 times a day, like 16 malas a day. So like you can start with chanting at least 2 or 3 malas or 4 malas a day. So that will be a very nice start. And then when the next Gita class, it's tomorrow evening. And is it true that whether we wish we wish seeing Dhruva star will be granted? So it is not just like that. No, we just see the Dhruva star and wish anything, like it will get granted. So if something has to be granted, we have to please the Supreme Lord, and then the thing can be granted. So it is not that simple also. Like we have to do some effort from our side, right? And then please start morning 5 a.m. or before. Oh, okay. So that is our like our sadhana time. So we will be busy with our sadhana. So it is very difficult to start something on the morning. How does it differ if someone goes focused and determined technically to reach the goal, but without concentration much spiritually? Will he attain the goal in perfection? So here we see that focus and determination definitely helps in our way. So they are like very important like elements in the perfection, the path to perfection. But spirituality is also very important. So if we get some goal, materially speaking, we have nice focus and determination, and many people are achieving big goals in the material world. But then what is the use? Their goals will be shattered after a period of time. They are not going to be permanent. So if I get a spiritual thing accomplished, then that is not going to be destroyed even after the death of this body. So that spiritual asset will carry on with me, right? So in this way, like being focused and determined, and also being spiritually inclined is a very, very important thing. Spiritual concentration is also very important thing, right? So otherwise we will get only a simple goal, and then we will not get a permanent result. So better as well, like we will do something in spiritually concentrated, that we will get. So now you see Dhruva got whatever material thing that he wanted a bigger kingdom, he got it. And then spiritually also he was blessed. In both the things are accomplished. That's the intelligent way of doing it. And then when it will end, okay, Gita course. So 4 days, like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, as we did last week, the same way it will happen this time also. Importance of the number 108. Now, in one of the other sessions, I had mentioned that like there are 108 Upanishads are there. There are 108 principal gopis of Lord Krishna are there. So in many places in spiritual circles, this number 108 is used. It's kind of very auspicious number in the spiritual, this one, right? So then what we do, start from tomorrow's Bhagavad Gita session. We will start from the beginning of the So no, like I had put the this one chapter descriptions. It is like directly we're going to start from 6th chapter about the regulation of the body, and then many other wonderful chapters like that are there. So we are going to see some very essential subjects from those chapters. No, we are not going to go back to the initial chapters. Like we are going to start from where we left. No, and does Gita talk about law of attraction? um, Law of attraction, it is there, no kind of that we will see in the three modes of nature chapter. So if we are in the mode of goodness, we will get attracted to getting up early in the morning. We will get attracted to study and things like that. So we will get attracted to things which are much more in peaceful in its nature. And if we are in mode of ignorance, no, naturally we will get attracted to sinful things. Now if you see uh, has anybody made a law that the drunkards and this people who are sinful, they have to be active in the night? So naturally they become active in the night. And then is there any law that spiritual people should be active only in the early morning time? So it's a natural division. No, naturally the spiritually inclined people, they will get up early in the morning, they will do all spiritual aspects. The sinful people, so they will become active late in the night. That's a natural distinction that is there. So in this way, the law of attraction, I don't know about the modern world what is the law of attraction, but then in the Vedic system, the law of attraction works in this way based on three modes of nature. The Kshatriyas or the people in the mode of passion, they get attracted to certain things. People in the mode of ignorance, they get attracted to certain things. So that's something that is I'm seeing as law of attraction from the Bhagavad Gita. And then how can we get up early in the morning, like 4 a.m., even though we think of getting up, we are not able to. This is, we need to have some good company. That's a very important aspect. So the spiritual practices, if we want to drive our system in a different direction than what we were already been doing, so then we need spiritual association of people who are all like-minded, who can who want to do similar things. And then we need to have regular association with such people, so then it is possible to gain strength from each other, and then we can do it. So there are definitely the alarm and things like that, and also definitely it will help. But then if we don't have the spiritual nourishment that is coming from a higher source, so then it is very difficult for us to keep on. One day, 2 day, we will we will get up for the alarm, and third day we will just switch it off and we will sleep. So we also need to have some nourishment, some kind of what is it? If I like something getting up at 4 a.m., if I like something doing at that point in time, so then it's very good. I can actually I'll be able to maintain it for a long time. So if it is just a procedure, I just have to get up early in the morning, and I don't have anything worthwhile doing at that point in time, or I'm not having anything which I like to do at that point in time, so then it's very difficult to sustain that particular thing, right? So by having more association with people who are getting up early in the morning, so that will help a lot. In fact, we all in the ashram, so we get up 3:30 or between 3:30 and 4, and every single day we have our first aarti at 4:30, and then we sit down for meditation from 5 to 7, or sometimes till 8, and then we have nice classes and things like that in the morning for us. So that's how we get enthused for doing these practices. So will the Gita course cover entire Bhagavad Gita? So it covers at least all the important concepts which are there in Bhagavad Gita. The entire Bhagavad Gita, sloka by sloka, we have higher courses for it. So that will not be done in this course. And then what is the significance of getting up early between 4 and 5:30 a.m.? What is Brahma Muhurta? Brahma Muhurta means 1.5 hours before the sunrise. That is called Brahma Muhurta. And that time is filled with mode of goodness. That's pure mode of goodness. And when we associate with that particular time, we will also develop mode of goodness. That's the highest form of mode that is available. And like being just active in that period, gives us a lot of benefit. So just like being active in the late in the night, so we will get influenced by mode of ignorance, and we will start getting qualities of mode of ignorance. And being active in the early morning will make us associated with mode of goodness. So it's in fact the best possible time for like our meditation and devotional process and things like that. So we will get the best possible absorption and focus and things like that at that point in time. So it's quite favorable for these kind of activities. This is quite favorable. So daytime is quite favorable for all the business activities and then the like all the movements of this world. So it's passionate. And then nighttime is in mode of ignorance. So even the time of the day like is divided into these three parts, and they are they influence us in different ways actually. And then time between 3 to 5 a.m. is Brahma Muhurta. So yeah, basically 1.5 hours before sunrise. So you can see the sunrise time, and then you can calculate the Brahma Muhurta. So 1.5 hours before sunrise, and like little after also, like you can consider. So that period is very, very important period. And then I have been reading Bhagavad Gita since my college time. I'm practicing Gita instructions a lot, but my family, especially my wife, is not in such practice. I teach her, but still she's involved in a lot materially. Sometime I got angry due to such differences. Even I know I should not do this. Kindly guide me how to control and tackle this situation. So it's basically the thing is that if we are practicing spiritual life, then definitely we will we should be having a little more control on our anger. And one thing that just simply reading, it is definitely good. But then if we can have association of other people who are practicing spirituality, and then if we are there in their guidance, so then it will be a very nice this one. So these personal cases may require a little bit of discussion. So you may personally message me, like we can discuss in a personal forum. Like one thing is one immediate thing that I can offer is that we should not immediately react to things that are happening around us, and we should know that by giving instructions. So in the third session we had kind of discussed, by giving instructions to people, it will only put them off, and it will not give them the enthusiasm to follow. Actually, these kind of things we should step down, and then we should walk with them in the path to identify how to explore this particular path. So generally the instructions would only repel people. So in that way, like we can personally discuss about this in detail. Let's see, like if we can identify what is exactly can be fixed, so that this thing may not appear in the future, right? Just for my information, how many hours do you all sleep in the ashram? It depends on the different people. For some people it requires like just 5 hours, and some people it's 7 hours, and for some people it is like 3 to 4 hours also is sufficient. So people to people it differs. And then it also like depends on your advancement in the spiritual practice. So more you advance in the spiritual practice, your needs of eating, sleeping, all these things reduces. You can actually sustain with less. That's the thing. And by doing an activity daily at the same time for 21 days builds a habit. Is it true? It can be. It can kind of create a impression, but I don't know about this 21 days formula. So it requires a little more solid practice. There are a lot of distractions that are there in the. Okay, I think by mistake, some characters are getting pressed here. So okay, so it's 21 days. We can try it out. We have like cases where people have practiced for 2 months, 3 months, even 6 months, and then falling apart. So no, it may not be completely true, but then it can give a good foundation, right? It can give a good foundation. And then sloka in Sanskrit also, please. Which sloka in Sanskrit? I'm not able to understand that. How much ever I try, I tend to get angry at my kids. How should I control that? So it requires, as I was mentioning, this particular aspect. Okay, since a lot of questions are coming on anger management, So I will try to record and post a particular Sanskrit sloka, and which is very powerful sloka on Lord Narasimha. And like you all can chant, you all can try to memorize that sloka and practice that sloka. It is really very powerful sloka. No, I will just recite it for you, and then later I'll record and like only the sloka with text I will record and I will post it. So I was just thinking about it, and now since many questions are coming, so I'll just do that. So it is a sloka on Lord Narasimha, and we know Lord Narasimha is the personification of anger. No, he was, when he appeared to kill Hiranyakashipu, he was literally anger personified. And it is mentioned, if we generally in the material sense, if we meditate on somebody's anger, somebody is angry, and if I meditate on that person's anger, I will also develop that angry attitude. But then if I like meditate on the Supreme Lord's anger, my anger will vanish because he is all pure. So now this particular sloka is really very powerful. Now I'll chant, you can listen to it, but then later I will send the recording separately. So it is Om Namo Bhagavate Narsimhaya Namaste Tejase Avir Bhava Vajranaka Vajradamstra Karmashayan Randaya Tamo Grasa Om Swaha Abhayam Atmani Bhuishta Om Shram. So this is a very powerful sloka, and you have to chant every day you can chant this sloka, and this will kind of give a lot of what is it, benefit in you. Definitely Hare Krishna mantra is really very powerful. So if we have sufficient faith in it, so then that itself is sufficient. So this is also a sloka from Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is this can be chanted, and it will specifically it is addressed to Lord Narasimha. So it will definitely help us in controlling our anger, right? And then how to become like you to join ashram. Okay, like you can message me personally. Like I can just share some information regarding that. Another personal information: at what age I got initiated into ISKCON. So I came into ISKCON in the age of 21, and then that's the age I came in. And then okay, so I think the questions are done. So thank you very much for your patient listening, and I will record this particular sloka and then I will post it. This is very powerful, and it can help us in controlling the anger, right? So thank you very much. So see you all tomorrow for the Gita course session. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Okay, some advanced information on your program. You can message me. I will tell you these some extra programs if there is any. And okay. Okay. So further things you can message me on WhatsApp, and I will respond to you. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.